Welcome to Fostering Solutions, a podcast that uplifts people and enterprises making positive impact in communities around the world. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Foster. My guest today on the Maximizing with Michelle series is Sarah Bolyard. Sarah, why don't you tell the audience about yourself?
Sure. So, Sarah Bolyard, I'm the president and CEO of the YMCA of Kanawha Valley. I have lived in the Kanawha Valley since I was 14 years old. We were a product of transfer and relocation for my father's career. So I've been here for over 30 years and call Charleston home with my husband and our little boy, Willie, who's 6.
Awesome. So you are the president and CEO of our YMCA here in Charleston, in the Kanawha Valley, actually. So how did you get to this position? Describe your journey in the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, so I started in the nonprofit industry about 15 years ago, and I started with the American Heart Association. And I kind of worked my way up through the Heart Association. I started as a youth development director there, doing jump rope for heart, and then I became a heart walk director, and then I ended my career after 10 years there as the executive director for the state of West Virginia.
Okay, good. So what keeps you in the nonprofit sector? It can be bumpy at times, as we know.
It's tough.
So what keeps you in the nonprofit sector?
I think the nonprofit sector keeps me because I'm passionate about it. I truly adore the families and the kids that we serve at the Y, but I also know that we're creating a bigger impact in our community. A nonprofit job is different than a for-profit job in multiple ways. And, I was in a sales role before and I was selling a tangible item. It's not a tangible item. We can get touchy-feely to the heart, but as far as leaving with a product, that's not what the nonprofit industry is about. And so I know that we're making an impact on people's lives with what we do every day, and that's what keeps me.
It's really investing in people.
Yeah, absolutely.
To help them to be better.
Yes.
So this series is about maximizing impact. What does that mean to you, that whole term, maximizing impact? What does that mean to you?
So I think for me, maximizing impact is using all of the resources that you have to create the best outcome. And whether that means that you're doing that for yourself or you're being a resource for somebody else, it always helps maximize their impact as well. So either doing it for yourself or for others, I think, is just being a resource. Really helps.
Absolutely. So, I wrote a book.
Yes.
Maximizing Impact, Success Strategies for Dynamic Nonprofits. What I see you have it with you.
I do.
And you've got lots of
marked.
marked,
yeah, it's highlighted in there
and everything. So what chapters resonated with you and why?
So I will say the first thing that stood out to me was in chapter 5 about building your team. And you made a very a bold statement that's vulnerable that I think some people would be afraid to say, which is that you were fired. I was too. So to see somebody else write that out and put that out, it was very impactful for me because it's something that you don't talk about a lot. I think in our roles, especially being the head of organizations, that's not something that people think ever happened to you. It happened to me. I was in pharmaceutical sales for 8 years. I was not good at it. I was not passionate about it. I didn't enjoy it. And I was terminated from it. And it was a blessing in disguise because it led me to my nonprofit career. And nonprofits is something that I've thrived in. I think I found myself, my voice, and my confidence and my ability to lead through nonprofits. And so that was extremely impactful to me, was just hearing that you've been there too.
Been there too. And it's like, I haven't talked about it because it's like, yes, I was terminated. And I chose, instead of looking for another engineering job, I really pursued my passion because I really wasn't feeling it.
Yep, same.
And it's like, it was a blessing in disguise.
Absolutely.
And God does work in mysterious ways.
100%.
Because if I was happy, I could have missed my calling and never really pursued my passion by just focusing on money and,
right.
and all that. So, that was very liberating when I wrote it.
Yeah, it is, because you don't say it very often, and you don't hear people say it, because at the time it's like, oh, it's kind of embarrassing.
It was embarrassing.
Yeah, but now it's like, God, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. It also taught me a lot about my leadership style, and the type of leader that I wanted to be was not what I had in that industry. And so I think that it was it was, for me, a life-changing moment for the better.
Absolutely. And I have always said that I see how God has orchestrated my life
And it's being able to really pursue your passion.
Yeah.
Is a blessing.
Yes,
it's a blessing.
Absolutely. And I thought too, in that chapter, you talk about building your team, and I think that is probably the best lesson I've learned just in the past 3 years while I've been leading the Y, is that the team is vital, and I have been able to really build a strong team. And we've started talking about succession plans, and I'm not going to be there forever, and so I just want to make sure that we have the right people in place, because it's not my Y, it's our Y.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's important to do that for the organization. So we've built a pretty solid team where people thrive in what they do, and that's really important. We're not throwing people into positions just to fill a role.
And just making sure they're equipped, right?
Absolutely.
That's why I talk about professional development, having a budget for your folks.
Yep. Yeah,
to get
definitely
the skills that they need.
Yeah, and they want to. I mean, nobody just wants to be stagnant in their role, regardless of what industry they're in. So I think being able to make an investment in your people is extremely important.
Absolutely.
Other chapters that I thought were really that made an impact on me, talk about leadership essentials. And there was a quote from Charles Patton. He was the first CEO that met with me when I became the executive director at the Heart Association. And my mentor, Bob Pepper, took me to meet him, and he had just made a big impact on me with the first meeting. He's, very personable, and you could tell he was very passionate, and everybody in town loved him. So when he moved, it was a big...
I know, it was a big void. He was one of the most down-to-earth corporate leaders I've ever met.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And Bob Pepper, my mentor, is very similar to that. He was at NGK Spark Plugs for a long time, and they had a great relationship. And so I think it's because they were both very powerful leaders, but they were very humble and down to earth, which you should be.
You should be, right. I learned so much from him. And I remember when because he gave us a grant when I was at Kisra, and he wanted to come down and meet with us and hear about what we were doing and see and just really just normal.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, to me, that's a lot. Just saying, just a normal guy,
right?
Relatable guy,
right. Yeah. No, he was wonderful. But then the myths about leadership, I chuckled a lot while I was reading it, because it's so true. And one of the main things is that everybody just assumes that we have all the answers. I don't have the answers. And it's not me, it's my team.
And you're not supposed to.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, if anyone tells you they do, you kind of look at them kind of funny, because they're not They're not telling the truth.
No,
that's why you have a team.
That's why you have a team, and the team will have the answers, but not me personally. And so I think that's really important for people to understand. As leaders, we don't always know what we're doing.
We don't always know, but we have to make the decision when it comes to making a decision.
Right.
We have to use the information we have to make the best decision at the time.
Absolutely. I tell that to people all the time, because I get pulled in a lot of different directions. We have 3,800 members, households that are members, and over 6,000 members themselves. And so I get a lot of requests. And I always tell folks, if it's what's best for the entire organization, I will do it. But it's got to be what's best. You can't just
cater to everyone all the time.
No, definitely not. But then I also appreciated that great leaders are always in the spotlight. I don't like to be in the spotlight. I am, in certain scenarios, I'm very extroverted, but I'm kind of an introvert extrovert. So I don't like being out there and taking credit for things, because again, it's not me, it's the team. I had a board chair once who said, you need to toot your own horn a little bit. I'm like, but that's this is what we do. We're doing our job. And so if people see that the job is getting done, then that's success to me. I don't think we need to brag or boast about it.
It's like you got to tell your story. It's like you're caught because you have to tell your story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That we're always on. Leaders are always on. I promised my husband a few weeks ago that I would turn it off. And that's very, very hard to do. I think for all leaders, it's hard, maybe after COVID more so than it was before, because the expectation is that you're always available.
And you're always on, you're always thinking. It's like my brain never
stop.
stops.
Yeah, it doesn't stop. And so I try, like I have made it a pact to myself of not checking email before I go to bed, because I'll see something and then it keeps me up all night long. And then I'm not good the next day. But I also make sure that my team does the same thing, because I think that sometimes they feel like if I'm doing it, then they have to do it as well. So I'm really big on PTO, and when you're off, you're off.
Oh, yeah.
My team knows too. If I send an email to them while they're on PTO, it'll say in bold, "Do not read this until you return." And it's just because I need to get it off my plate, but I don't want them to feel like they have to respond, because that personal time is really important for everybody.
I try to make sure they take their time, because work will just, you'll be sucked in, and then by the time you know it, the end of the year is there. So really making sure that I reinforce the fact, take your time off.
Take your time. Yeah. And I think too, we've had some struggles over the last couple of years with COVID and being in the industry that we're in. And a lot of times people, and especially folks on my team, take stuff a lot very personally that I have to make the decision for. So if I have to terminate somebody, or if I have to make a change in how we do business, that's my burden to carry.
Right.
They don't need to take the brunt of that. That's the role I signed up for. And so I think that letting it go and being off needs to be that too, is just not carrying the load.
Absolutely.
I don't like to carry it all the time, but I'll do it because that's what my role is.
But you can then. Yeah, I remember we were going through some struggles at the foundation with a couple of personnel related items. And I remember talking to an employee, and she was like, "I'm not sleeping." I was like, "Listen, this is nothing."
Yeah.
Try not having enough money to pay folks. Right. Because we went through times like that at Kisra.
Yeah.
And I was like, whatever we're going through now, don't sleep. Get your sleep. You should not be worried about this. You know what I mean? So it's like, after going through certain tough times, it has equipped me to not stress about, okay, this is, this sounds terrible, but in the large scheme of things, this is nothing.
Right.
We can get through this. So I think being able, those past challenges really equip you to deal with whatever you're going to deal with.
Right.
So
I heard somewhere that 99% of the problems you create are in your head, and 1% is actually reality.
You can just get so consumed.
Oh my gosh, and go down the rabbit hole.
It's not that big a deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I tell myself at the time, but sometimes I need to remind myself.
We all do. We all do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, then you talked a lot about leadership styles, and I think that in my opinion, that changes throughout your career.
And throughout a week. I mean, you have to flex, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like when I first started, I started in the middle of COVID, and I came into an industry that I'd managed 9 people to 109. So it's the hardest thing I've ever done as a leader, but it was also a complete drastic change in the industries. And so for me, I was a servant leader right from the get-go. I was in the trenches with my team. I still do get in the trenches with my team, and I think that that's super important for them to see you.
Right.
I work in childcare classrooms if we're short. I'll hold babies. I'll change diapers. I'll do whatever we have to do. And I think that creates a really unique bond between you and your teams, because they know, what they deal with on an everyday basis, and you're in it. Yeah. So I think in the beginning, it was probably more of a servant empathetic, and now maybe more of a democratic servant empathetic. I'm still always there, but I think it's important for that to fluctuate a little bit. And then you also talked about role models and mentors, and like you, my father and my parents are my biggest role models. And then I have a local mentor as well, who's super important to me, and has been a sounding board throughout my career, specifically in nonprofits.
Right. It's good to have. Because my parents, because I remember when I was married, I would always be so frustrated at my husband at the time, because he always had an excuse, and I think I had it in a book too, about why he couldn't keep a job.
Yeah.
I was like, I couldn't relate.
Yeah,
my parents came. My mom taught teachers at the Teachers College, and she started working at the child care center, but we were happy as a lark because she was working. Yeah. My dad was the CFO at the post office in Guyana, where we're from. And he was doing temp jobs. In New York, you can sign up for temp jobs and you wait for them to call you.
Right.
So it's like, I can't relate to people who have excuses.
No.
For why they couldn't find a job and keep a job. I just can't relate, just because of my parents.
Absolutely. My parents and my grandparents were like that too. My dad worked his entire life. He was in the military and then came right out and worked for GE, and then he worked for Coca-Cola, and that's what brought us here. And he made sacrifices that at the time, at the time I thought, oh gosh, you're moving us from Nashville to Charleston, West Virginia. That's horrible. But he had to, and it's what he needed to do for his career. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for him for that.
Absolutely.
That now I see more as an adult and in my role than I probably did when I was a
when
child.
you see how well they have done with whatever limited resources they had, it's like, wow, okay, I get it now.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So you have a number of programs at the Y. Which ones do you think are most impactful, and how do you know?
So I would definitely say childcare is the
probably that was the hardest program I ran.
The hardest, and you talk about people not wanting to work. We try to do the best we can, but I think more so now than probably pre-COVID, and I wasn't around pre-COVID, but I think that there is a direct correlation between economic development and childcare.
Absolutely.
And so we had a training today for new summer camp staff, and I told them when I introduced myself to them, I said, you're more than just a summer camp counselor. You are contributing to the economic development of our community because parents cannot work if they don't have childcare. So think of that and be proud of that, and know that you're making a bigger difference than you thought you were when you signed up for this. So I think that childcare is definitely the program that is the most impactful program that we have. But I think it also is, it can be measured different for different people. I think that the person who gets up every day and is mentally needs a place to go to get everything out, the health and fitness side is the most impactful to them. So I think that, it depends on who you ask what is the most impactful program that we do. But for me, it's definitely childcare.
Right. So what strategies have you used to maximize the impact of the childcare program? So
with childcare and just what we do in general, when I started, I was really fortunate to have a mentor through YUSA. We're owned and operated solely on our own. So I didn't have the luxury of having the previous leader here, which is probably a good thing because we're two completely different people. But we were really able to focus on three things, and that was childcare, mission, and membership. Prior to that, we had our hands in everything. We did every sport known to man. We tried everything. We were at different locations all throughout the community, and it didn't work because we were spreading ourselves way too thin. And so COVID was a great opportunity for us to really look at our business and identify those three things that we were good at. And that's what we've done for the last 3 years, and it's worked. All board meetings are only focused on those three things. Anytime I'm out having a conversation with a potential donor, I focus on those three things just because it's what we do and it's who we are. So that's really helped us maximize our impact.
Good. So it may just be just really honing in on what you're best at instead of spreading all over.
And let somebody else do it if you're not.
Collaborations probably.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you know now that you wish you knew when you first started at the Y?
Oh, God.
In the middle of COVID.
Number one, that you can't make everybody happy, but I will try. That I think for myself personally, I think if I am much more confident in my ability now as a leader than I was 3 years ago. There were definitely a lot of days where I questioned whether I made the right decision because it was so hard. I mean, not only were we dealing with limited resources, limited funding, we were having mask issues, and that creates a whole nother issue with people in general and just their views on it. And so that was very challenging for me. So I think just knowing that we could get through it, and it's because I had a great team. I had the support of my team around me, and I think just if I would have known that, maybe it would have been a little bit easier in the beginning.
Right.
But also that it's important to say no. When you know that you can't do something, you have to say no. And I think it's important for us as leaders, and specifically maybe female leaders. I'm the first female leader of the YMCA here in town, and that carries a pretty big load. But it's important for me to know my value and know my worth and know that I was hired for the right reasons. I wasn't hired just because I'm a woman. And so that's been something that I try to keep in my mind a lot too, and tell myself on a regular basis.
So what aspects of your work do you feel proudest of? there at the Y?
I think the proudest thing I'm most proud of my team. They are resilient. There's a lot of grit in them. I have a lot of people on my team who have been with the organization for decades, and they're still there. And
how long has that Y been around?
Oh gosh, we've been in Kanawha County for 116 years.
Oh wow,
the YMCA has. We've been up on the Hill since the 1980s, and I have folks who have been with us since that time. And now they're members, but they're retired. But I've got a lot of folks on my staff who have been with us for 25, 30 years.
Wow.
And so they've seen a lot of different leaders.
Could imagine.
Yeah. And they've gone through a lot of changes, and they stuck through with me. And I think that we've created, again, a team that we're incredibly diverse. We're incredibly vocal. They're very innovative when they might not have had that luxury before. They have it now because I think that
they have a voice.
They have a voice, and that's really important. And they're also, I think it's really important that just because you work at a nonprofit doesn't mean that you have to make minimum wage. And it's incredibly important to reward your staff with wages that are livable
market.
And be able to market that, but to know that it shows them that they're valued. And so we've made a lot of changes over the last couple of years just with that. And it's really helped with our retention. And so I think it makes a happier team, which to me is important.
Absolutely. So I know you said you're focusing on your 3 core areas. Are there growth opportunities that still exist even though you're focusing on those 3 areas?
Yeah, I think just with childcare alone, there's a tremendous amount of growth. There's a critical need for childcare in our community and across the state. And I think, again, with the direct correlation with economic development, we've got to work hand in hand with our chambers and with our state officials to ensure that there is adequate funding, but there's also adequate resources for childcare throughout the state. So I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for childcare growth. I think, too, in the schools, there's an opportunity for us to go into the schools and be the after-school care provider for different elementary schools. Not everybody has the luxury of a third base program. And while it's convenient for some parents, it's not for others. And so I think we can fill a gap there. But I think the biggest thing that we're really creating a voice and we're having some growth is just in how we are perceived in the community. I pride myself, and my team laughs at me all the time because I always say we're so much more than a treadmill, and I can't stand it when somebody calls us a gym. It is my biggest pet peeve, and I'll say probably if a member calls and complains and that's the only thing that they complain about is the gym. Maybe we're not meeting your needs. Maybe you need to go to a gym because we're not. We're not a gym. We're a nonprofit organization dedicated to healthy living, social responsibility, and youth development. And that's our passion. And so I think that there's definitely growth opportunities from the health and fitness side, but we're starting to focus more on the needs of our community. We created a Y Marketplace, so we're now a food pantry through Mountaineer Food Bank. Because it's a need that we found through.
Food insecurity is huge.
It's huge. Yeah. And, it all started because of our team. We had one little girl in after school who went to her counselor and said that her and her sister were hungry on the weekends. Wow. And that just has spiraled into this. And it's because we're passionate, because we love what we do, and because we love the families that we serve. And so now that's growing, which is huge. We just recently partnered with the Special Olympics on Tennis for Fun, which is a program specifically designed for folks in our community with special needs. And that's another passion of our team, is that we want to make sure that we have those opportunities in place for everyone to be able to participate in every single thing that we do. And so that might be creating special curriculum. It may mean hiring special ed teachers. We don't know what the future holds with that, but we definitely want to have a voice in that. And so those are probably the biggest areas of growth for us, is that we just want the community to know that we're a nonprofit for the community, and it's we're not a country club up on the hill. We're not just a gym. And so that's where we're having the most growth.
That's great. I like how you're being responsive to the needs that you see.
Yeah.
That is great. So what advice would you have for someone thinking of starting, whether it's one of like a program like you have at your nonprofit? Do you have any advice for someone? Because sometimes people don't realize how hard it is to work in the nonprofit sector.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for someone thinking of starting programs that are similar to yours?
So I would say, number one, make sure it's something that you want to dedicate yourself to, because it's not just yourself, it's the people who you will hopefully employ, it's the people who you serve. You need to be dedicated all around. But I think from a child care perspective, it is, and as you know from Kisra, it is 10,000 times harder than what I thought. And that's not just it's not just difficult handling the children. And there are studies out right now that kids are starting to see more mental health. They're starting to show more mental health challenges earlier in age. And we're seeing that. We're seeing the effects of that. And so that's hard in itself. And now we're hiring behavioral therapists, things that we never would have done before, we're doing now. It's expensive. That's I think the biggest challenge is, and that's the challenge with childcare now, is that, there's been bills that have been passed where companies can start childcare facilities on site and they get tax breaks, and that's great. But what they're not taking into consideration is the cost of insurance. And our insurance has skyrocketed in the last 2 years.
Wow. And
every other childcare providers has as well. And so it's not just being able to care for someone's child. It's so much more than that. And licensing and I could go on.
The ratios.
There's just a lot.
There's a lot to it.
It's not easy. And so that, I would say, is if you haven't worked in the industry, don't do it. You need to know, you need to get in there and you need to work it, and you need to work your way up. You need to start as a lead teacher, or even as an aide, and then work your way up through management so you can see everything.
All aspects
of it, because it's really, really hard.
I always, I'm very real with folks when they I want to, sounds kind of neat, and taking care of children, but it's a business that if you're trying to make it work, you're not going to make money on it.
And you can't. It's our mission. Like, that is for us. People think, again, it's just that what people don't know. They think that you make money on it because it's expensive. Childcare is expensive.
It's expensive.
But the overhead cost just to be able to operate a facility is huge.
It's tremendous. Yeah.
And if we break even at the end of the year, that's great. That's success for us. So
absolutely.
It's kind of just what I would tell somebody.
Yeah. So as we wind down, just thinking about the future, starting your whole new career in the middle of COVID, and having a lot of serious lessons learned during that time. What gives you hope as you look to the future? What gives you hope?
I think from me professionally, my team gives me hope. We have a motto that it's our new vision for 2023. It's help one, help many. And so just the innovative thinking that has come out of the team of ways that we can be a resource in the community and ways that we can meet the needs of our community is tremendous. And so to see that is super exciting, because I know we have the right people in place to make it happen. And so I can't wait for the day where we can celebrate, or you and I can talk about what we might be doing with the youth that are in foster care. We talked about an idea that some folks on our team had, is that we need to fill the gap of kids who are older in the foster care system, who at 18, they're going to get kicked out on their own and they have nowhere to go. So why can't we as an organization take them at 15, give them a job, give them a mentor, teach them how to be financially stable so that when that time comes, they're okay and they're set up.
And they're successful.
They're successful.
Transitioning.
So I can't wait till that happens. I'm really excited for that. I'm excited to see how we can be a resource for other child care facilities in West Virginia and have that voice. I've been given a really unique opportunity to be able to work with legislatures on it. And so I think for me, that's where I see the biggest growth opportunity, is just helping be a change maker in economic development for the state.
So have you been working a lot on policy? Because I know child care, like, for example, the reimbursement rate, I remember that was it wasn't in line with national standards for kids who were subsidized. So have you had the opportunity to work on policy with the legislature? Yeah,
this past year we did. And this past year we really tried, and it did not pass, but there's been some different changes that happened.
It takes a while to pass.
It's working right now, so we're going to keep our fingers crossed that we're going to go down that track. But before COVID, when a child was on subsidy through the state and they didn't come, you weren't paid.
Right.
And so that creates a really big challenge with staffing, because you're paying the staff to be there. You're paying all the overhead costs, whether mom brings Johnny or not. You know, you can't.
And you want to serve the kids who are
want to,
who are,
yeah,
on subsidies.
And because those are the ones that we want to help them the most.
Exactly.
And so we can't control if they're going to be there or not. So that created a big challenge for us. When COVID happened, that changed, and we were reimbursed based off of if they were enrolled or not. And so that was the big policy that we were trying to make firm and be the regular policy for the future, because we've been able to be successful, and we've been able to continue to staff. We've been able to get to pay increased wages because we've been given that subsidy and given that reimbursement. So that's one of the policies that we've really been working on over the last year.
Good.
So that's been fun. And then from a national perspective, I was chosen to be on our YUSA Child Protection Committee, which is for
Congrats.
me huge.
That's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Yeah.
So I'm one of 35 CEOs across the country that is going to help kind of implement and create policy around child protection for all Ys.
Wonderful.
So that's super exciting for me and for us, and I think for our organization, it's critical.
Good. Well, thank you so much for making time for this conversation. I've learned a lot, and
thank you.
it's good that we share some common history and experiences in our careers.
Yes, definitely.
So appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Are you thinking about starting a new nonprofit organization? Are you with an organization now and would like to take it to the next level? Are you on a board or committee of a nonprofit and want to make sure that you're being effective? Then I have the answer for you. My new book, Maximizing Impact: Success Strategies for Dynamic Nonprofits. I wrote this book to share my journey and the secrets of my success. Learn the essentials of designing and implementing a program, finding money for that program, evaluating that program to make sure that you're making an impact, and so much more. Maximizing Impact: Success Strategies for Dynamic Nonprofits by me, Dr. Michelle Foster. Be inspired, be informed, and access invaluable resources. Get your copy today.